A person existed in the year 2000 BC. Like you, there were others in Rome. Someone was trying their hardest. Somebody who was putting in a lot of effort, making an effort to live within their means. Someone attempting to maintain concentration so as not to avoid becoming envious, divert your attention. They tried to do so out of envy. Take an interest in and participate in politics difficulties of the period they were attempting, as they instructed him to clean up after Zeno and Cyprus, one of the greatest Stoics, yet nonetheless they remarked that despite their best efforts, it seems like something is bothering me. I'm wasting time by constantly making comparisons. I don't understand other people. Advantages. Essentially, I'm not being stoic. Here was a man named What Should I Do, writing to his pal about Saros, great Stoic philosopher Seneca, and we see Seneca's response as in the Tranquility of Mind in an essay that is among his finest writings, since it tackles this eternal issue that, at the time, they were finding difficult, which we're now having trouble with. How do we discover how to arrive at tranquility? Of course, we can't have both quiet and peaceful, run away to have some peace. We cannot hide from it all we cannot withdraw to a monastery. The Epicurean garden, as many Romans did there then, we can't only act as though nothing significant is occurring in the so. The Stoics' secret was to figure out how to. There is ataraxia freedom when we arrive. Due to alterations in a tumultuous world, in a rowdy, inefficient, noisy and loud world, as we are aware of Seneca. He found it difficult to deal with one of his top letters. That I employ in the opening of peace is an essential element in Seneca's existence. Nero is mad and is breaking apart. Sen perhaps making an effort to finish this essay. Attempting to even work on this essay, must finish working on this. And everything. This sounds like someone is getting arrested. The blacksmith is downstairs, working. The masseurs are audible from the top of a gym. Despite the splashing, he can perceive sound. He hears the horses galloping around on the. He seemed to be the only one on the streets below. Sufficient cacophony to send you mad, he remarked. He hated his own because it was adequate. Ears, but he points out that he's grown tougher. Facing something of this nature, he claims, I make an effort to focus my thoughts. Avoid strangling it on external objects. The outdoors itself, he claims, could be medium. Given that there isn't any interference from, you can reach a place within, he says. No word where there is no sound pulls you from your skin, regardless of compliments or a danger, and you may concentrate tranquility about what you should do with him. That was calm. So this is what the Stoics understand. And this is what we're currently working on. To discuss what Seneca has to say today. Able to first instruct us in let's discuss some off-topic topics. Here are a few definitions, including my favorite Seneca anemia. Employs this term of tranquility, and he claims that anemia is a feeling of the road you're following. He claims isn't being drawn aside by the routes that he states cross yours, particularly the footsteps of the despairing forgetful. So keep in mind a lot of the distracting, many of the things that agitate us come from our noise in and of itself, is not tranquility. Not our phones pinging, but rather when the phone rings, we check to see what we have that FOMO, but others are doing it. Otherwise, we feel envious or inadequate enough for us to not be making progress and reaching their current state. Occur as a result of the fact that we overlook the we go down. We lose sight of who we are. Endeavoring, we lose sight of what matters. It matters to us that we remain blind. Utilizing Stoicism as a means of escape, writing an essay discussing fugitives, part of the world's commotion and loudness. You know someone, he replies, retreating. Comments, let's head here, let's visit that location. They are from one intriguing location in the far lands to come. He claims that they embark on a single journey after a different and alternate spectacle for display, claiming to be quoting the poet. Therefore, he claims, every male ever runs away. However, we never abandon ourselves. Given that we are there wherever we go, claims that he chases and hounds his own personal dullest partner. Thus, we need to understand that our problem isn't not the venue's problem, but our own. Thus, essentially, what Seneca is stating is calmness is an attitude. It's not getting rid of everything that rattles nonetheless. Developing a type of resilience, an identity, a being able to block out certain things. When we're rushing through it, you understand. In his meditation, Mark truly talks about saying, withdrawing inside yourself, you must not flee from situations to, that is precisely correct, leave them behind. Nevertheless, Seneca kind of bounces throughout his essay, around and bestows a great deal on his friend. He is capable of doing a variety of tasks, including greater and more intriguing ones, he remarks. You want to choose your pals wisely. Surround yourself with individuals who share your calm. Individuals with comparable principles to avoid always attempting must fulfill their expectations or win them over, so no epicus, they are not misguiding you. Would discuss this in a speech that things regarding his statement that, if you live, you can pick up skills with a lame man, like he said, limb, that we transform into like the individuals with whom we interact. Thus, if 1,000 miles separate all of your buddies, if they are occupied, an hour observe their family, should they consistently. Those who are preoccupied with their phones worth incorrectly if they don't, it is highly improbable that you will enjoy tranquility. You'll understand. That have a lot of influence. Portion of it that we are unable to escape the globe, yet we can choose our environment. Choosing who we spend time with is up to us. This is the reason why Seneca converses with individuals such as Cyrus, writes with Lucilius for this reason. The letters that they're writing to one another, attempting to select philosophically, possesses positive influences. Most likely, you themselves might aid in their development of the stillness regarding influences. He expressed their desire, for he highlights in particular a particular kind of anyone well known in Rome, such as most likely, you know someone similar to this presently. Adds, if you were to catch them coming. The morning they'd left their home look extremely occupied and focused. So tell me about your plans for today. You know, they would just kind of act as though I've recently acquired a lot of things, and he leaves, but for what purpose and to what end? And they wouldn't have a strong response. Was he making such a busy call? How individuals are busier and less time-consuming. Busier than ever before, but their actions are not particularly deliberate. Their approach was not particularly strategic. Could not explain the connections between one thing. They're just kind of moving on to the next thing. They are enslaved to the calendar. They seem to be simply operating on energy, since all those in their immediate vicinity are moving around. Serbia claims that if you inquire, when he leaves his house, one of them, what have you got and where are you going? He'll say, I don't know. But it's okay. But I'll see a few people. He claims that they just aimlessly roam. Around, they deviate from their original intent. Nevertheless, what they discover is that being said, how many people are like that? We similarly use our email quite often. Emails, we allow what arrives to determine what. During the day, we act and think as instead of being deliberate, and rethink this. Anemia is a concept, that understanding of what needs to be done now, the difference between urgent and critical tasks, contrasted with what's important to you. Duty, what's necessary, as opposed to, isn't this truly unnecessary? Key components of growing. Calm, you may be distraught, and if you feel like it, occupied whilst on vacation, you have to check all these boxes, make sure that tranquility is greater in this state. Mental firmness, as he put it. It enables you to determine what you must, it enables you to do, and reassured that you don't require to perform some tasks correctly. A great deal, FOMO is only pondering, if they are executing it, I ought to be executing, someone since they have a podcast. In doing so, this individual is releasing. This individual just took this action against the individual is bringing their family with them. Here, along with the feeling that I must maintain, what leads us is that with all these folks, such a hassle, concern, and discomfort. The essay by Seneca discusses several topics. Cutting back on material belongings, he claims in yet another work of literature that what we believe is hidden beneath marble and gold of the price to purchase an item similar to the only outlay that it costs is, while we pay, there is the insurance, not to mention the anxiety. In regards to it, what will happen is the expense associated with learning how to use it. Additionally, we feel guilty about not using enough of our belongings. So many of them become a slave to and take control of us. It is at the cost of them and our peace, so in case you're thinking, I am excessively preoccupied and stressed out. One thing that's noisy that you can begin is, anything I don't need, can I get rid of? Why is my mental serenity being stolen? Comparatively speaking, everything I own is providing me tranquility. Tranquility, tranquilly, tranquility. Tranquility, tranquility, tranquility. Tranquility, tranquility. And frequently we heedlessly get things rolling. It's going to be enjoyable. When in reality, this will help me unwind. Is the X acting in a hostile or even hostile manner? Lectures about the Stoic philosopher Zeno, who loses, as we have discussed. Whatever he says in a shipwreck, he learned that there had been a shipwreck. Our founder was sunk by everything he had. According to Zeno, fortune wants me to be a less. He made the point that an overburdened philosopher, because Zeno, the Stoic, realizes that genuinely to be more, one must have less. Philosophical, together with naturally additional calm, let's move on to private. The most important source of human more than death, he claims, is anguish and disease, as well as his desires, anxieties, and claims that the negative effects of money extend, surpasses the rest, and Seneca becomes a lover. The difficulty of texts and concepts is note that he's also capable of doing this. Speaking essentially about our data when you're under a lot of pressure to facts, should you possess this enormous heap next to you in the books that you feel responsible for failing to read as he spoke? He'd discuss if you have everything today. On your phone, these news updates, you feel you've read these articles. If you're following, you must read. All that occurs instantaneously. You will, of course, experience Serbian conversations are an agitate. Regarding meditating on the creations of your geniuses, but in reality it's a somewhat small pile of books, or those who ought to be emulated, and that when I do this, it helps us understand. If I'd like to know what's occurring globally, among the methods I read some old stuff to find tranquility. As you read this essay, written by Seneca, my understanding is aided by its 2,000 years. Improvements in the state of the world, if I were to refresh my Twitter feed to comprehend a day's news story event that I would like to read about similar historical occurrence from 100 the past 100, 200 or 2,000 years prior, since this removes it eliminates any partisanship, and taking the recency bias out of it allows me to notice it. Sans the accoutrements of the contemporary world, after which I'll be able to see things much more clearly. About what I ought to be aware of with this Aurelius the incident, particularly the people make errors in circumstances such as reading Marcus amid the pandemic writing in a plague, as did Aurelius, would enable us to gain some perspective. But additionally, it provides us with a precise foundation to. Although we ought to act appropriately there, I consider that Tim Ely's genuine response to, he says that this is how we nurture tranquility. Flexibility gives one the capacity to adapt. And he's mentioning something he especially personally went through. Politics has taken up everything in his life. To become a senator, however, after that, after being ill, he has to go to the years in the Middle East. He returns, he is banished, returns, and is then banished once more. He's constantly kind of laughing and chatting. With Seneca discussing the irrationality of fortune, he notes that if luck favors and robs him of the resources, he shouldn't turn around right away. He suggested he should bolt from his back. Use his resources more judiciously tasks and carefully consider what to do. Ought to figure out how to help, saying that his country presupposes him not to be. He was permitted to run for public office by a military. Let's say he must live alone, ability allowed him to be a supporter. Or, says his attorney, if he is found guilty, stillness allowed him to assist his fellow countrymen. Considered hazardous by unspoken support to view him in the forum in banquets permit private homes to shine. Him, her portrays. He portrays a kind and understanding friend. Devoted companion who may have lost the citizen's obligations allow him to practice. Seneca's idea is that they are those of a man. Irrespective of your location, need to determine how to be useful in ways to positively impact the situation. Pay attention to the things that you can do. Of course, Zeno's actions following the I understand that I am not a merchant. Become a philosopher, correct? Being adaptable brings us peace. Due to our constant need for adjustment, the challenge is making accommodations for this. The method indicates that there's always something that we should do in place of I'm wrecked, everything is lost. Something was removed from me, and we now calm because everything is all right, thank you. Subsequently, Seneca makes it clear that such as if you believe that today is not going well, if you consider that Rome was not as good as Serbia claims. Find a city that is more miserable than Athens during her tearing apart by having murdered 1,300 of the 30 tyrants, not stopping at their finest citizens, however, their blatant brutality rejected on its own. There was no possibility of no chance of justice existed for liberty. No chance of liberation existed, but he claims. But Socrates was right in the middle of things. He consoled Ed in the depressing city about it. Fathers inspired individuals who were sensing desperation from the state, the wealthy people who are afraid of their portrayed fortune. To those who dared to emulate him, he was a living example. Strolling around a 30 masters' unfettered spirit is the key. Is it true that even during the lunacy of Athens' despotic regime at the time, when it came to using himself, Socrates was well-mannered and serene? Socrates centered himself on the things he could influence. Socrates was the protagonist of the because of this. Is incredibly stressful in our own right peculiar circumstances. Calm, then, is this understanding of your identity, obligated to ensure that it's taking out a few unnecessary distractions, identifying the appropriate sources of impact, eliminating superfluous or laborious items property, which is sifting our informational crash, but primarily it's simply accomplishing our duties. As assigned, our efforts are being directed at. Our controllable actions are carrying out the doing the morally correct thing. When you focusing on what you can control will help. Someone is asserting that you'll prosperous, but you will be imprisoned at least in the present if nothing else. You'll be aware of following through on your obligations, and we can rest easy knowing that. I'm not sure what that anemia is that we all want. In actuality, all I can do is look to the future. Let you know is that what's ahead. Uncertainty, turmoil and disintegration, along with annoyance, noise and distraction. But if anemia can be fostered, should we be able to foster peace? If we can discern our current course, if there are 4 Stoic virtues that we can aspire to: bravery, self-control, justice and discernment, unless we make an effort to flee from it. Now that we are facing what lies ahead of us, we can be serene, composed and powerful. And admirable within each philosophy, according to Seneca, was regarding getting 1 item every day. Single concept, 1 insight, single narrative. We work with that every single day. You can subscribe to Stoic Verse, like, share and comment.